let's talk about my day a little bit from yesterday. I actually did not watch the Vancouver Canucks game against the Dallas Stars. And that's mostly because it was Thursday, it was a 7 p.m. start, and I have Richmond Sockeyes PJHL play-by-play that I do on Thursdays, so again, no Canucks game for me last night, but I did see the results, I did see some of the highlights, and overall I did see the internet reaction. Oh boy, we do have quite the topic on our hands. But that's not what I wanted to talk about today. I didn't want to talk about the Canucks, or the Canucks game, or the Canucks as a whole, or their team performance, or individual players who aren't living up to their standards, and players who are making bad plays. I didn't want to talk about any of that. Instead, I wanted to talk about just one little thing. Little things, Loui. That was completely unintentional. I didn't even mean to set up the joke like that, but I wanted to talk about Loui Eriksson today, because he's a player that's been polarizing the Vancouver Canucks fan base for years now. Years and years and years, and taking a look at Loui Eriksson and what he's done with the Vancouver Canucks, it's obviously not a $6 million a year body of work, but Loui Eriksson has been in that territory where everybody kind of knows that he's not a $6 million player, and everybody knows he's not really the same player that he was back when he got 60, 70 points and 30 goals. But Loui Eriksson today is a player that a lot of Vancouver Canucks fans are kind of wondering, okay, why is this guy in the lineup? And we've talked about that in the past, why Loui Eriksson has been placed in the lineup in the way that he has been over guys like Gaudette or guys like McEwen and Grayovac, just to bring up some recent examples. Even Sven Berchi was a guy that was quote-unquote bested by Loui Eriksson in terms of the roster spots at the beginning of the year. But hey, the Loui Eriksson to Utica debate has been going on for a few months now, and people have been chiming in here and there, but I wanted to add a little bit of a new perspective. This is a tweet from Taj. Now, I know Taj has his reputation, and people will say things that they want about Taj, but he posted this talking about what was said on TSN 1040. Rick Dollywall said that he has heard Benning is the one keeping Eriksson in Vancouver, and Travis Green wouldn't mind if Loui was sent to Utica. So that in itself adds a new layer. Now, say what you want about Taj, say what you want, but this is something that was said on TSN 1040. If you didn't know, Dollywall was let off by Sportsnet, so he went to TSN like immediately. Like the next day he was with TSN 1040, which is an amazing pickup for them because Rick Dollywall is a very, very good person in this Vancouver Canucks media space. But hey, take a look at this. Travis Green apparently would not mind if Loui Eriksson was with Utica, and Jim Benning, on the other hand, he would. Now, immediately after reading this, my first instinct was, that's really not a surprise that Travis Green would not be upset if Eriksson was in Utica. And the biggest reason for that is the deployment. Let's take a look at how Loui Eriksson has been deployed over his past few games and try to take a little bit of a guess as to how much Travis Green values this player. Last night, against the Dallas Stars, the team that Loui Eriksson once was a 70-point man on, Eriksson played 5 minutes and 58 seconds. That was it. His entire time on ice against the Dallas Stars last night was just under 6 minutes. Let's go on Tuesday against the Nashville Predators. In the Canucks' 5-3 win, Loui Eriksson only played 8 minutes. Against Winnipeg on Friday, 7:44. Against Chicago, 7:31. Against St. Louis the other week, 6 minutes and 24 seconds of ice time for Loui Eriksson. Now, before that, against San Jose, Loui did get 12 minutes, and earlier on in the season against Edmonton and against Florida, his first 2 games on the year, and, well, the first game of the year was actually his only game for about a month, so that's not great. He had 13 minutes played in his first 2 games played on the year, but it's been down ever since, the exception being the San Jose game. So, with a season-low 558 played last night, I think it's really obvious to see that Travis Green doesn't really rely on Loui Eriksson like the $6 million price tag would indicate he probably should. So, learning about all of this, reading it from Taj's tweet, and listening to Dhaliwal on the radio, it makes a lot of sense as to why Green would not really care if Eriksson wasn't on the team. It's not like he uses him all that much anyway. But now we have to go into the other side of this. What the heck is going on with Jim Benning? Because Benning is ultimately the guy who's going to send players down. He's the guy who's going to call players up. And he, in this position, is the ultimate switch as to whether or not Loui Eriksson will be with Vancouver or with Utica. We've seen this Vancouver Canucks team not be afraid to send their quote-unquote roster players to the AHL. They did that with Sven Baertschi. Now, devil's advocate, we did talk about it. Baertschi is not necessarily somebody who exhibits those bottom 6-like qualities. He's more of an offensive guy, which is why the Canucks sent him down, because they wanted their bottom 6 caliber players in the bottom 6. But at the same time, Loui Eriksson technically did fight his way into the roster over Baertschi. Loui Eriksson is still technically an NHL player today, albeit not a very used one. And today, Loui Eriksson is being placed in the lineup instead of guys like Zach McEwen. Earlier on, the debate was, what the heck is going on with Gaudette? Why is Gaudette not in the lineup, but Eriksson is? The early argument at the beginning of the season was Sven Baertschi. Why the heck is this guy in the minors and not Eriksson? So it's an interesting thing to think about, and sure, we've brought it up on the channel before. Loui Eriksson and the Utica Comets are these two things that may come into contact throughout the year. And if I'm going to be honest, if it were up to me, I would have sent Eriksson to the minors at the beginning of the season, and I know a lot of you would too, because I got those comments, but for the most part, Loui Eriksson, throughout the 2019-2020 season, he has 0 points. The guy had 1 assist earlier against Florida, but that was taken away from him because they dubbed the goalie being the one who actually played it over to the other guy, but Eriksson is at 0 points on the year. He's at a total of however many games played he has, and his time on ice is declining every single game. Is this a player that you would rather have in your lineup instead of a guy like McEwen, who is on the Canucks right now, but who hasn't suited up yet? Graovac is in that position as well, and at the same time, these injuries that the Canucks have had, Mott, Ferland, Roussel, Sutter, and then whatever's going on with Jay Beagle, are these the players that you want to say don't belong in the lineup over Loui Eriksson? Because I'll tell you what, if Travis Green really didn't care, if he really didn't want Loui Eriksson on this team, he would have scratched him more. Because it's not just Jim Benning who's to blame for Eriksson being on this team. Travis Green is playing the guy, albeit not very much, but he is taking ice time away from McEwen and all that. So obviously I'm not going to sit here and antagonize either of these two individuals, Benning as the guy who won't allow Eriksson to go to Utica, and Green as the guy who's playing Eriksson, but I just wanted to bring it up. Because some of these guys who were Utica faithful have now found themselves onto an NHL roster spot. And sure, if you're taking a look at the Canucks and you're saying, okay, McEwen, Graovac, they weren't called up to be played, they were just called up to get the money, act as a roster player, and act as another tick on the list of current Vancouver Canucks active forwards, then okay, cool, we're not going to play them, cool. But something feels wrong to me having these guys on the team and seeing the hard work that they put in Utica and seeing their track records and everything that they've done so far, especially with McEwen, and saying, yeah, I'd rather play Eriksson over that player. Something feels wrong about that to me. And sure, something may change tomorrow. Hopefully, something does change because the Canucks did lose and we don't want them to lose as Canucks fans now, don't we? But it's something to think about. Which is why I brought this up in this video today, not because I want to antagonize anybody, but because I just wanted to bring up some questions about how things are playing out on this team. Hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.